Pope Francis, he was a pope of so many firsts. The first from the Americas, the first Jesuit, the first to even choose the name Francis. But honestly, that's just scratching the surface. His papacy was nothing short of revolutionary. He championed compassion for the forgotten, but in doing so, he sparked some of the most intense internal battles the Catholic Church has seen in, well, generations. He was this incredible figure of contradictions, and his legacy, it's every bit as complicated. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with the end of his papacy, then get into his core vision, what really drove him. From there, we'll look at the big controversies, the division that followed, and finally, his huge impact on the world stage. So, let's start with the end of an era. In the spring of 2025, news broke that marked the close of one of the most, and I mean most, transformative papacies in modern history. It happened on Easter Monday. He died from a severe stroke at his residence in Vatican City. It was pretty sudden, and just like that, a 12-year papacy, one that never ever stopped challenging the status quo, came to a close. I mean, right from the very beginning, you could tell this was going to be a different kind of pope. Think about it. He was the first Jesuit, the first from the Americas, but it was the little things too. He said no thanks to the fancy apostolic palace and chose to live in a simple guest house instead. This was a guy who was all about humility and a pastoral style, not the usual pomp and circumstance we'd come to expect. And that theme of simplicity, it carried through right to the very end. I mean, look at this. Even in death, he broke with tradition. He asked to be buried not in the Vatican, but in a simple tomb in Rome's Basilica of St. Mary Major. It's really the perfect final statement for a pope who spent his entire life trying to pull the church away from all that worldly glory and back towards the people. Okay, so to really understand all the controversies that swirled around him, and there were a lot, you first have to get inside his head. You have to understand his core mission, this vision he had of the church as a field hospital. And this wasn't some new idea he came up with after he was elected. Nope, this quote is from before he was even pope. He fundamentally believed the church's job wasn't to hide behind its own walls. Its job was to go out to the peripheries, as he called them, to meet people where they are, in the messiness of their real lives, and to heal wounds, not just hand out condemnations. So how do you actually do that? Well, his big idea for this was a concept he called synodality. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it basically means walking together. The goal was to stop having everything dictated from the top down in the Vatican. Instead, he wanted a church that actually listened to everyone, lay people included, and involved them in the conversation. Honestly, for an institution like the church, that was a pretty radical shift. And then there was this moment, an off-the-cuff comment on a plane that became, without a doubt, his most famous line. Who am I to judge? Now, let's be clear. This wasn't a change in official church doctrine. But the tone, it was a seismic shift. It put mercy way out in front of judgment, and boy, did it set the stage for the battles that were about to come. But here's the thing. When you take a vision of mercy and try to apply it to a 2,000-year-old institution, well, you're gonna get friction. It's like trying to turn a giant battleship on a dime. His push for pastoral outreach slammed right into established doctrine, shadows from his own past, and, of course, the church's most painful scandals. Case in point, his 2016 document, Amoris Laetitia, or The Joy of Love. In it, he kind of cracked open the door for some divorced and remarried Catholics to receive communion after a period of reflection. To his supporters, this was pure pastoral mercy. But to his critics, whoa. They saw it as a direct attack on the sacrament of marriage. It got so heated that 4 cardinals publicly issued what's called a dubia, basically formal questions, accusing him of creating confusion and, get this, flirting with heresy. And he wasn't done yet. Fast forward to 2023, and he greenlights non-liturgical blessings for same-sex couples. Now, the Vatican was really careful to say, hey, this isn't marriage, it's not changing doctrine, it's just a way to show God's love to everyone. But that distinction was, well, it was lost on a lot of people. The backlash was immediate and global. You had entire conferences of bishops, especially in Africa, flat out rejecting it. It just blew the lid off the deep divisions in the church. It wasn't just his new policies causing controversy either. Shadows from his past in Argentina just kept following him. There were these lingering accusations that back when he was head of the Jesuits during the brutal military dictatorship, he didn't do enough to protect 2 priests who were kidnapped. He always denied it, saying he was working behind the scenes to save people. And to be fair, a Nobel laureate who was a victim of the regime backed him up. But the accusations, they never really went away. But if there was one crisis that truly, deeply damaged his papacy, it was his handling of clergy's sexual abuse. And the flashpoint was chilly. He appointed a bishop named Juan Barros, even though people were screaming that this guy had covered up for a notorious abuser. Francis didn't just ignore them. In 2018, he went to Chile and defended Barros, calling the accusations against him calumny, slander, and demanding proof from the victims. It was a disastrous misstep. He eventually investigated, admitted grave errors, and even issued new laws to hold bishops accountable. But for so many people, the trust was just shattered. And this quote from Anne Barrett Doyle really gets to the heart of the frustration for survivors. Francis confused us. They heard all these hopeful promises, but then they just didn't see the action to back them up. His new laws still felt like the church policing itself. And that promise of zero tolerance, it seemed to fall apart when it came to holding powerful bishops accountable. It left a lot of people feeling not just disappointed, but deeply betrayed. So you take all of this, the pastoral outreach that thrilled some and terrified others, the mishandling of the abuse crisis, and what do you get? You get a Catholic Church that was more openly and bitterly divided than it had been in generations. This wasn't just progressives versus conservatives anymore. The battle lines were drawn right inside the Vatican. And if you want a perfect snapshot of the divided church he left behind, just look at this. This chart shows where the cardinals, the guys who will elect the next pope, stand on the issue of blessing same-sex couples. Only 20% have come out in support. 13% are opposed. But that huge number in the middle, 67%, they're completely silent. Nobody knows what they think. That's a ton of uncertainty for the future of the church. So on one side of this divide, you've got powerful conservative voices like Cardinal Mueller. He's basically saying, why are you creating all these problems? Things were clear before. To him and many others, Francis was just caving to what they call LGBT and woke ideology, and it was dangerous for the church. But then, on the other side, you have his supporters, like Cardinal Kupich, and they see it completely differently. For them, Francis was trying to bring people together. He helps the church recover that one crucial word, together. They'd argue he wasn't changing doctrine. He was reminding everyone that we're all in this together. And here's the real irony. One of his biggest moves to try and force unity actually made the divisions even worse. In 2021, he cracked down hard on the use of the old traditional Latin Mass. His goal was to get everyone on the same page with the modern reforms of the church. But for the traditionalist Catholics who loved that Mass, it felt like a direct attack on their faith and their heritage. Okay, but look, if we only talk about the internal church fights, we're missing a huge piece of the story. Because outside the Vatican walls, on the global stage, Pope Francis was, without a doubt, one of the most powerful and influential moral voices of our time. He completely shifted the focus. He used his incredible platform to talk about climate change, publishing a landmark document called Laudato Si'. He constantly went after runaway capitalism and what he called the globalization of indifference and migration. He made his very first trip as Pope to the island of Lampedusa a landing spot for refugees, calling the world's inaction a shipwreck of civilization. He also worked hard to build bridges with other religions, especially the Muslim world. He truly was a voice for the voiceless. And you have to remember this scale we're talking about here. This isn't just a religious leader. He was the head of a global community of 1.4 billion people. So when Pope Francis spoke, the world, not just Catholics, listened. His voice shaped conversations on everything from poverty to the environment, and his influence reached far, far beyond the church. So in the end, what are we left with? It's this incredible paradox, isn't it? He started a revolution of compassion that was heard all around the world, but at the same time, he left behind a church that's basically at war with itself. And that leaves us with the big question, for the next pope, and for all of us, really. Can the revolution he started actually continue without him?